I said earlier, it's good to be back again. We all agree there's no place like home. And that's absolutely true. No place like home. Love being home, love being back with you all. And we're continuing our series, See Yourself. And we're talking today about see yourself as old yet new. Old yet new. The old is who we used to be. The new is who we are becoming. The old is that man or woman, that person we were before we began to follow Jesus. And the new is that man or woman we are becoming as we walk with Jesus day by day by day. But the old versus the new is a both and kind of thing. It's not an either or. It's sort of a mixture of both together. And we will always be a mixture of the old and the new. The old will always be a part of us. But it doesn't have to lay claim to us. And the more we follow Jesus, the less the old is a part of us. The less it has control over us. The less it influences who we are and how we live and how we think. You know, Jesus does not obliterate the old of us. That'd be too easy. No, he does something much more miraculous than that. What Jesus does, Jesus takes the old me and transforms it into a new and better me. Say that with me. Jesus takes the old me and transforms it into a new and better me. Years ago, we had an awesome couple in our church family here. I was telling the wife one day, she had told me their story that how early in their marriage their husband had been an abusive alcoholic. And many times she had considered leaving him. Enough was enough. But she just didn't have the courage or the strength. And one day she said they went to church, and as they're sitting in their pews, she just sitting there listening to the pastor. He's sitting there right there beside her listening to the message. And she said, I don't know what happened, but something the pastor said finally got to him. And it changed his heart. And he stepped up out of that pew that day, and he never drank again. See, before he was all in to drinking. But now he had given his life to be all in to Jesus. Now he was all in to serving Jesus. Now he was all into loving his wife. Now he was all into being a better husband to his children. But once he came to Jesus, he stopped drinking, but he started running. Every day, 365 days a year. It didn't matter the weather. Didn't matter the conditions. He didn't care. He would get up early in the morning and run. And he invited me to go with him. And man, I forever regret that those days I ran with him. Because he was older than I was, but he ran me into the ground. And we ran in the dark. One day we ran in the rain. Another day we ran, it was like sleep. There was literally, we were running on Green Street and there was ice on the side there as we're running down. I'm just praying, dear God, don't let me slip and fall and kill myself here. And we ran and ran and ran. You know, they say that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You know, and what they're saying is that a person may give up drinking, but they always have these sort of alcoholic tendencies in them. But Jesus took his alcoholic tendencies and made them so good. That's what it means to be old yet new. Jesus just taken the old me and transforming it into a new and better me. It's a process that takes years, but it's happening. It's happening as Jesus happens in us. And Paul comes to grips with this. He talks about this in his book in Ephesians. And he begins by sort of describing who we all were at one point in time. And as he writes to this church on the Mediterranean coast of Turkey, these new believers there, He tells them, so I tell you this, and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking. See, most of the believers in the church in Ephesus were non-Jews. They were Gentiles who had become Christians and who now follow Jesus. And when Paul says, you must no longer live as the Gentiles do, well, the way the Gentiles lived, they lived according to the Gentile culture of that day. You see, what Paul's saying to them, because you're now following Jesus, because you're now living a life for Jesus, you must no longer live as your culture lives. You must no longer do as your culture does. You must no longer think as your culture thinks. You live a different life, a different way. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. You know, culture is pretty cool. Culture has to do with all our institutions, all the arts, all the music, all our learning, all the things that our culture gives us. And culture is made up of custom and acts and all these things together, and is given to me and you, and everything we have and live and know comes from our culture. And I'm very thankful to be part of our culture that we're part of here, and that I've been born in America. Very grateful, because everything about me is mixed up with the fact that I am here in this space right now. But our culture, like any culture, is sort of like our Constitution. It's of the people, by the people, and for the people. You see, culture is what happens when people live together over time. It's how we interact. What is permissible, not permissible. What is accepted. How we will be together in the space. And see, but the problem with culture is that it is socially focused. It is not God-directed. It deals with how we are to be together and how we are to get along together as people, but it doesn't deal with anything or talk anything about how we are to be with God. And if God is to be our focus as we follow Jesus, if God is to be the reason that we live, the one who gave us life, then culture is a good thing, but it comes up short. And becomes up short, it causes people to be futile in their thinking. And Paul continues and says, verse 18, they are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of their ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Notice everything in the first part of this verse hinges on the last part of it. Due to the hardening of their hearts. See, their hardened hearts towards God leads to ignorance of God, which results in a life separated from God and a darkness of their understanding about God. You know, foundational to the Christian view of humanity is that every human being, every man and woman, boy, girl, every person has been created for a relationship with God. A love relationship where He loves us and we love Him in return. And it's only as we live out of that God-given relationship can we become fully human, fully for what we were created to be. And it's only in our God-given relationship that we can realize and become and fulfill our God-given purpose and be able to live our God-given life. And because relationships are all about hearts, relationships are a heart thing, a love thing. When our hearts become hardened towards God, we cease to have a relationship with God. And when we lose our relationship with God, we have the great potential to lose our humanity and our ability to live. And Paul writes, he says, having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity with a continual lust for more. this is our old. This is us in some shape or form. And I don't know what that was for you. I know what it was for me. That is our old, who we were, but who we're not now. We were born into and caught up in our culture, in the brokenness of it. And that is who we were, but that's not who we can become in Christ. For Paul then goes on in verse 20. He says, you, however, did not come to know Christ that way. Surely you heard of him and were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Hey, give me a moment. Oh. I got it this morning. I got dressed really quickly, and I didn't pay attention to what I was putting on. And so in the darkness of the room, I ended up putting on these really nasty, these well-worn shoes. Oh. Wow. Luckily, I had these new shoes here just in case this were to ever happen. It just happened today. All these feel so much better. They're a little bit nicer, not quite as worn out. Almost polished them once, but not quite. Oh. But Paul says to put off the old self and to put on the new self. See, a right understanding of Jesus is necessary for a right living of our lives. And notice, Paul says to put off your old self. He makes it personal. You see, my old self is different than your old self, is different than your old self, is different than your old self, is different than your old self. Each of our old selves is very unique. And because it's very much us, we have to own it. And we have to accept it for what it is. You know, I'll be honest with you, part of my old self is aggressiveness. Our son Kevin, as you saw a picture of him early, he once told me, Dad, if you weren't a Christian, you'd be a mean man. And when he said that, he spoke absolute truth into my life. Kevin was exactly right. If I were not a Jesus follower, I had the potential to be a mean man. But because I'm following Jesus, now I'm walking further and further away from that mean man every day. You know, sort of like when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. You know, we find in the Bible the story, Lazarus died, he'd been dead for 4 days. Jesus goes to the tomb, and when he arrives at the tomb, he tells the people there, take away the stone, he said. But the Lord said, Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he's been there 4 days. And Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out. His hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. That's what this process of becoming like Jesus is all about. Jake, take off his grave clothes and let him live. And the same Jesus who calls out to Lazarus calls out to us. Take off your grave clothes and begin to live. Begin to set free. Oh, 1 second. Oh, Oh, you could tell I was in a real hurry this morning. I threw on my old work shirt. Didn't know where that came from. Just put it on. Oh, something else. Oh, one more thing. Old work watch. New watch. See, Jesus calls us out of our old grave clothes to put on living clothes. From who we've been to who we are becoming. He calls us to walk away from the past, to step into the future he has for us, to put off the old self in order to put on the new self, which is created to be like God. Righteousness, his holiness, his love, his mercy, to become ourselves. And Jesus challenged us to put off the old and to put on the new. But I did not realize till recently I could not do that by myself. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how many positive thoughts I thought, no matter what practice I did, I could not put off the old and put on the new by myself. I just couldn't do it, neither can you. See, the cry to become new is the cry of help. Where we cry out, Jesus, help me put off the old. Help me put off the old and put on the new. Say that with me. Jesus, help me put off the old and put on the new. See, Jesus, help me put off the old and put on the new. Every morning I wake up to pray. Jesus, help me put off the old and put on the new. Every time I open my Bible to read about you and its pages. Jesus, help me put off the old and put on the new. Every time I come to Temple Baptist Church on a Sunday morning to worship. Jesus, help me put off the old and put on the new. Every time I make space in my busy schedule so I can spend quiet time before you and receive what you have for me. Jesus, help me put off the old and put on the new. But to be able to put on the new of Jesus, to understand the heart and life of Jesus, we have to begin to follow Jesus. First, give our life to Jesus. It's a hard thing. Like I mentioned earlier about CP, who needed a new heart to live. We need Jesus' heart to follow us. And this is Decision Sunday. This is the time, for the next few minutes, I would just ask you to bow your head and close your eyes. Everything we do here, the preparations, the prayers, the songs, the practices, is to help people begin to follow Jesus. And you may be far from Jesus. And today you may need a heart transplant. You may need a new heart. You need his heart in you to beat and to give you life and breath. You begin to follow him by confessing the sins of your past, receiving his forgiveness in your present, and giving your life to live for him in your future. And you come forward and you take my hand and say, Scott, I want that new heart today. I want to begin following Jesus today. I want to start serving him today. And that may be your decision today. Or maybe you've been following Jesus, but there's things in your past you've not let go of. There's things that are part of you that you've become satisfied with, content with, or you sort of overlook, I'm not that bad. But in this moment, you know that you know You need to put off the old. Put off the former. Walk away from the past. Walk away from the person you've been to become the person that Jesus is calling you forth to become. Man, just come forward, take my hand and says, God, I want to let go of the old so that I can grab hold of the new. Whatever God might be doing in your heart right now, whatever you feel led to do, I'll just be standing here. Brian will be playing just a few moments to let God do in you today. Dear God, do in us what you need to do. Help us be willing to let go of the life we've known, to live the life you want to give us. Help us to follow you. Be all in. Forever. Forever and forever. Dear God, we love you. We love you. And all God's people said, amen.